you'll pick up some things, I'm sure, today also as I'm going through this, if you have any questions. So we are going to be having this event in Houston, and it's going to be at the end of March. We're going to get into the exact dates here coming up. And this is a little bit about me. Most of you guys know who I am already, right? Rick Howard. I was an acquisitions officer for the Air Force, managed a bunch of contracts there, came out, started a consulting business right away. And then through a series of trainings, I found myself always working with companies, no matter what they hired me for. I was training their sales teams. This is how you sell. This is how you build a pipeline. Eventually that turned into a program that I built for companies. But then we just had overwhelming demand from people starting businesses, wanting to get into consulting, wanting to work as account executives. So now we have GovClose. That's a little bit about me. So I've been on a variety of sides of this. I can answer any questions you have, certainly. I'm guessing you guys can hear me okay. We're going to get into the schedule here, what's actually going to take place during the event. And then I'll answer any questions here towards the end. So write your questions down or put them in the chat, and we'll answer them as we get there. Now, if you look in the chat right now, at least if you are on LinkedIn, you'll see that Hal leads our sales team at GovClose and our advisory team. And so he's answering questions in there as well and throwing the links to some of the signups if you want to reserve your seat. We do have a couple packages. We'll get into all that. All right. Okay, first thing, if you're a part of the regular package that signs up for this, we're going to be in Houston. I think it's at the, Hal, you'll have to correct me. I think it's at the Royal Sonesta Hotel. We have that information in here that we'll get into that as we go through. But great location, awesome hotel. We put a lot of work into this. And that first day, there's some VIP access for those that buy that package where we're going to meet one-on-one and do some breakfasts and things. But first thing, just welcome brief orientation. You just learn a little bit about the program. I'll learn a little bit about who is in the class in person. I'll get to meet you guys, learn about your businesses, what you're trying to accomplish. And as you can see here, we have a few mission objectives here as we go through, and we'll just walk through those as we keep going. Oh, thanks, Hal. Hal just pointed out we're going to be at the Royal Sonesta Houston Galleria. So buy your ticket now so we can get you in there and meet you. Really great. I love Houston. I love Texas. I've lived there twice, but I'm in Boston now, so I'm actually going to be flying in and then meeting a lot of you. And one of the, by the way, one of the reasons we're targeting Texas is one of the 3 biggest states that our students and our audience is from. So, and those states being Texas, California, and Florida. And then of course, I mean, we have people in, I think, almost every state and certainly some other countries as well. So depending on where you're watching from, hopefully you'll be available that last week of March to come down there. And then Hal, maybe you can throw the dates also of this in the comment section. So Module 1, inside the federal buyer's mindset. So one of the things that I always talk about, and I really would like the people that are either getting into government contracting just from scratch, or you've been doing this a while, maybe you're struggling, you want to improve, understanding what is the buyer on the government side thinking, right? And who is exactly on that other side? Because it can be a little confusing just looking at sam.gov, you're trying to figure out, what's going to work for you. But, knowing, for instance, I was a program manager, so I had a problem set to solve. And, we're going to be talking about this. What's the program manager thinking? What problem is he trying to solve, or she? What does the contracting officer actually do? What about the finance people and engineers? So you have actually a pretty big team on the government side that is involved with government contracting. And a lot of people, there's the bureaucracy looms large, but there's a few, I would say, very precise people that you need to understand in the process, build a relationship with, make their lives easier. They can make your lives easier. So that's really what we're trying to do. And I could read through this, but we're going to go really deep into what you really need to know about the federal buyer's mindset. Now, right after that, we're going to jump right into the federal sales cycle. Some of you that are used to consuming our content have seen me present something like this before, right? And, if there's a foot stomper that I have when I'm teaching, it's that for a large majority of government contracts, the process starts so far before the solicitation comes out, like months, if not years, before an RFP or an RFQ drops. And so that's really what, not only do I want to drill that in, but in this live training, we're going to go through those steps. Like, where does this actually begin? Where can you insert yourself in the process? So by the time a solicitation does come out, your company, if you're a company, you guys are going to be the ones ready to win that contract. The government's going to want to award you that contract. And you want to understand if you're wasting your time, right? Because with some opportunities, sometimes the barrier to entry is just too great, or there's an incumbent. So we want to understand if you should eliminate an opportunity as far ahead of time as possible with putting the least amount of work in, to, hey, this is a great opportunity for us. We're going to put in a lot of work ahead of time so we can be positioned for that win when the solicitation comes out. So we're going to go through that cycle. There are a few steps there that you're going to want to understand. So, all right, that will take a little bit of time, right? Because that's the process that, honestly, the statistic, the last time I ran the numbers, and I ran them recently, was not, I used to say less than half of 1% of small businesses sell to the US government, but it's actually less than 0.25%. So 0.25% of small businesses in the United States sell to the biggest purchaser of goods and services in the entire world, which is the US government. This is why, by the way, not only are account executive jobs, because remember, there's, in our GovClose program, and by the way, who this is for, right? In our program, we have 3 different, I guess you could say, monetization tracks by understanding the government contracting expertise. There's for business owners, if you have a business, if you have regular sales, you're selling commercially, you want to start selling to the government, awesome. Like, this is a great track. So for the business owner, the second track is actually for a lot of, we're getting some younger people in the program now too, that are going out and getting account executive positions. So that's working for a company. And those are high salaried, typically jobs with a commission. And then the third track, where we have a lot of, say, federal workers, military professionals, they want to start consulting businesses, right? So that consulting track is a big one in GovClose. And so just for no matter what track you're on, no matter what path you're on, you need to understand that federal sales process that we were just talking about. Like, what is that life cycle? So there's a core curriculum that we teach way in depth in GovClose that we're going to be going over during this boot camp today. So by the end of the day, you're going to have a really solid grasp on what that is. What does that federal sales cycle look like, and where do you really belong in the process? Something else that I just want to, we're getting some, oh, thanks. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Tinron. But that's great. Glad you just joined. In person, this is why our certification program gets the results it does. And it's another reason I want to do this in-person training. It's one thing to watch videos and go through slides, but everybody's business is different. Everyone's background is different. So I want to be able to work with you to be able to say, hey, what should we really be capitalizing on here, right? So if you've got a business, like, where's that niche? And we'll talk about that in this program. Where is that niche that is kind of the intersection between the government buys it and there's not a ton of competition, where you can be really successful? If you're starting a consulting business, what is your background? Did you come from a federal agency, right? Did you come from, maybe you owned a law firm, or you come from accounting or some type of background like that, or the military, right? We can hone in on some really great niche areas, because there's so much in government contracting, and businesses need advisors that can really help them. So I just wanted to say that that's one of the things I'm going to work on in person with you guys, is really understanding where you come from professionally and what you're trying to accomplish, so we can do that together. All right. So at 11 o'clock on the day, by the way, we might play around with some of the times when this comes around in March, but this is the general concept of what we're going to cover during the day. So the small business advantage. Why does the government buy from small businesses, and why do you even want to be in this process? Now, remember, the SBA sets standards for federal agencies to buy from small businesses, and roughly that's 23%. But during this block, we're going to really dive deep on, what does that mean as a small business? How can you truly play in this area? Because it's different, by the way, depending on what you're selling. If you're selling software, you're approaching this in a much different way than, say, if you're selling construction services, or accounting services, or tax preparation services. The government buys things in different ways. So this is going to be key for you to understand, hey, does small business, does a small business set aside, how does that move the needle for you? What about the set asides and certifications? We've had a lot of changes this year, and we're going to be going into those. What does it really mean? Right. And if you've watched our content, you probably have an idea of my thoughts on that. But you can leverage certain certifications to help your small business. Certainly, we just don't rely on them, and we'll go very much in depth on that. All right. After that, we are going to start talking about your niche market. And this is something that, when we're talking about targeting, when we're talking about how you're truly going to be successful, this is the first part of the block. It's really going to get into, okay, what do you sell, right? So I'm looking at some people on Larry. Looks like he signed up for, let's see here. Okay, one of the team members will help you there, Larry. But sounds like Larry signed up for the boot camp. Now, look, when you're in there, if Larry's company sold something very specific, well, his niche is going to be different. His sales process is going to be different from, say, mine, right? Let's say you're providing training, right? Well, if you're providing, aviation training, for instance, that is going to be bought from the government in a much different way. So we want to know, like, hey, where are we looking? First of all, what offices are going to be buying what you're selling, right? Not just what agencies. I want to know what offices, right? What are those offices? And it may be a different office that buys from a small business than is buying from the large businesses. Maybe that we're targeting somewhere else. If, say, you're a service disabled veteran-owned small business, right? Like the VA, for instance, has specific language that has them buy a lot more from SDVOSB and veteran-owned businesses. They have policies that make them look at those type of businesses first. So depending on your company, what you're selling, how you're set up, we may be targeting different offices. That's what we're going to be talking about here. We're going to talk about how to target those offices, how to figure that out using data that's publicly available. We're going to do it in class, right? So we're going to do that together. So anybody that's going to this boot camp is going to be actually putting a plan together for themselves or for a company they work for, or just understanding the process so they can work in an advisory role somewhere. Let's see. Josh asked, can one discover a completely new niche? Yeah, absolutely. Happens all the time. But of course, it also depends on what you're specializing in now. If anything, like a good example would be an accounting firm that I worked with early on. That's probably why I use this example all the time, who thought their focus was going to be in tax preparation services. After we did the research drill and went through what we're going to go through here during the boot camp, they found out, hey, actually it's bookkeeping services for us that has a, lower competition, still high spend, and, a couple of the offices they had an advantage with. So everyone's set up a little bit differently, but people find new niches all the time. And it's very important because you want to be focused. The last thing you want to be when you're selling to the government is, I sell everything to everybody, right? Like I can tell you, that's not what I wanted to see coming in my office. And the famous, I don't know if it's famous, but the story I always tell is, when I was working, say, with cybersecurity solutions, I had one company in particular come in and they were pitching, they could do it all. They not only could they do everything in cybersecurity, which is way too broad, but they were then started pitching janitorial services and like, I don't even know what else, but you stop listening after a while because if anyone that says they could do everything, they're probably not good at anything. So, all right. Keeping on here. By the way, I may get sidetracked. Throw your questions in the, and by the way, there's a lot of commentary going on here. I could talk about this stuff all day, right? But, this is a 1 hour live session. So I want to keep things going here and just give you a good sense of what we're going to cover here in March. All right. Working lunch. So we're not going to take off, right? So everyone's paying to come down here. We want to make the most of our time. So we are going to do a working lunch, and we're also bringing some people in that have their own specialties, right? So one of them, if you've watched some of our content, Colonel Orndorff, retired DCMA contracting officer, 30-year, 3-time commander. I don't think anybody knows more about government contracts that I've ever met in my life. And remember, contracting officer has a different perspective than, myself as a former program manager. And they're going to have a different perspective from, say, other people that are in that acquisitions decision-making process, I guess you could say. But he is going to be a really good one to ask any proposal-related questions. FAR related questions. Really smart. And we're gonna have a few other people on the panel as well. So yeah, we're gonna be doing live coaching, covering some of the, anything that you guys really want during that hour, but mistakes that people are making. And if no one raises their hand, we'll go through our own topics. All right. What's after that? We're still on the niche development, right? It's very important. The whole niche and targeting, and for those that are actually in our full certification program, we spend so much time on federal spending analytics. And it's truly the reason that our graduates are separated from a lot of people in industry, because they really understand government buying at a degree that others don't. Okay, so you're going to be learning a lot about that during this niche development. We're going to be using different tools. So I'm going to be showing you how I use things like usaspending.gov, FPDS, some of the free tools that are available that can help you with this type of niche development. Okay, enough about that. I've been talking about niche development for a while now. Okay, module 5, then we're going into engaging before the RFP and the pre-solicitation advantage. Now, I will say this. There are some things that the government buys that this doesn't apply to. Typically commodities, low dollar things, but I can tell you, like, from the government side, and I actually sold to the government software and consulting services as well. Everything that you're going to be making working for yourself, the teams that really, really understand government contracting and are successful at it, they are starting ahead of that solicitation. So I want you to walk away understanding not only what the process is, big picture on a slide, but what do you actually have to do to win these contracts, right? So, all right, Rick, I know the offices I'm selling to, I know my niche, but how do I actually set up a meeting with that government office? What's the right approach? What does an email look like to them that they'll actually read and respond to? Can I call them? Right. And if I do get a meeting, what am I saying to them? Right. What kind of questions am I asking? Can I really influence this, or, help influence how a solicitation is written so it sets our company up to potentially win it? The answer is yes, you can do that. And we're going to be going over that. What does this really look like, this pre-RFP engagement process? It is critical to winning contracts. And my favorite quote in government contracting, this came from a sales executive I worked with when I mentioned I was selling software. This guy was great. And he's like, hey, if I'm trying to teach someone how to sell to the government, he goes, and I don't have much time, he goes, I just tell them, look, get meetings, 2 words, like meetings win contracts. And it's true. Now you got to say the right things. You got to be having meetings with the right people. We'll handle that during this program here, but it is a critical part of selling to the government. Critical. In fact, I think I've often said when I sold software to the government, I don't think I wrote a single proposal. I think every single sale I made was from contacting the government buyers, working them through their problem sets, how we could solve their problems, and eventually, it's a long process, right? But eventually getting the contract. So. All right. Of course, we're going to have breaks throughout the day. Like I said, we might move some of those around. After we get through our engagement strategies and our niche development, I really want you to understand what a CRM or a pipeline looks like that can win contracts. And what I mean by that, if you haven't used a CRM, what a lot of companies use to, especially in the beginning, when they're like, hey, I found an opportunity on sam.gov, or hey, I found an opportunity here. What they're doing is they're taking those and sticking them in spreadsheets. Or they might be sticking them in Salesforce or something that is not designed for federal contracting. Now, the steps involved in selling to the government, you remember when I mentioned that your niche, every company's niche is going to be a little bit different. Who you're targeting is going to be a little bit different. Well, one of the things that federal spending analytics gives us is, the government buys tax preparation services in a different way than it buys roofing, right? Now, we may see, for instance, and I'm going to make this up. I'm not telling any roofers out there that this is the way to do it, but we might look at the federal spending and the contracts to see that most of the roofing contracts actually end up being part of much larger construction contracts, right? And what that would mean is, let's say, if the government's building commercial, buildings, right? To use the word buildings, we'll see how many times I can use that. Well, if we see that roofing's part of these larger contracts, well, that becomes a subcontracting strategy, and the steps you're going to take to subcontract to the government are going to be different than the steps you're going to take to, say, if I was, say, selling software as a prime through GSA, right? Two different strategies. Some of the steps will be the same, but a lot of them are going to be different. A lot of them you're going to have added steps for subcontracting that you're not for GSA. So I'm going to walk you through in this portion all of the pipeline steps that we go through in GovClose. These are the steps that not only are necessary for winning contracts, but it's also a great way of making sure that you are not missing anything, right? And here's an example. This is a simple one. You send a proposal to the government. It doesn't even have to be a proposal. Sources saw it, anything. But you put a lot of work into that, right? Sources saw it, white paper, a proposal, and you don't hear anything back, right? I don't know how many times I've had this conversation with either whether clients or someone I was just having a consultation with. What happens when the government doesn't confirm that they received your proposal, white paper, et cetera, is they probably didn't receive it. Now, is that always the case? No. But what happens is, being on the government side, I know that, say, my wife sends me an email and it doesn't get through, right? Well, emails would get blocked on a government server for a variety of ways, right? It could be that an attachment gets blocked. Now, if the government's receiving proposals, that shouldn't happen, but sometimes it does. By the way, some other things that have triggered an email not going through: a picture in your signature block, a link in your signature block. A lot of these signature blocks people use have links and pictures in them, and those can get flagged. So making sure in the pipeline that you have a step, if one step says send proposal, right, the next step needs to be confirm proposal was received. If I don't see a confirmation, I assume that the government did not receive it. And by the way, it's happened, so many times where I've been working with companies, they checked back, government never received it. Okay. So that's just an example of one step that you're going to have in a pipeline for sending stuff or trying to win government contracts that you are not going to have in a normal CRM. So we're going to go in that. We're going to go in depth into the pipeline process, and I'll also walk you through some of the different strategies, and you'll walk away with what those steps look like. All right. And this is where everybody in the bootcamp is going to build their pipeline, right? So the goal is going to be to find your first 10 opportunities. Is that realistic to do in 20 minutes? Well, maybe not. We may have to extend this, but point being, I want you to leave being able to put into action everything that we are learning right now. For some people, I have a picture of sam.gov. Do you think sam.gov is where we're going to see all of the opportunities? No, definitely not. Some of them will be there. We'll see sources saw it on sam.gov and things, but we're also going to walk through reviewing things like acquisitions forecasts, right? If there's any tech companies in the room sometime, in assuming SBIR, STTR is back up and running, we'll be looking at some of those opportunities. And by the way, one thing that we're going to talk about during this session is what is changing in government contracting. Other transaction authority is a big, I don't want to say it's new, but it is being pushed like it hasn't in the past. So we're going to also walk through how to find those opportunities, those other transaction authority opportunities, and load those all into your pipeline. So you're going to walk away with that pipeline built, or at least the beginnings of a pipeline that is going to be built. All right. End of the day, big thing is, especially in this community, public sector is not that big, right? It's funny. You start going to conferences, you're going to start seeing a lot of the same people over and over again. So we're going to have a networking social hour. This is really to get to know each other a little bit better, get a little bit more one-on-one time with all of you, learn more about, hey, what's working for you guys, what's not, why are you interested in this space? And that's really, maybe this is more this part of it is a lot for me also, because I'm really interested. I love meeting, the people that consume our content and that are in this space. And you'll also be able to meet each other. And that's very important. I can speak to our GovClose program at large. Our students which are businesses, which are, people still in the government, consultants, account executives, they are working together on different plans. Some of them like jointly do consulting jobs together. Others are teaming up and going after government contracts together. So there is going to be a lot of synergy in this room, and I want you to be able to take advantage of that. So we'll try to do a good job too of making sure everybody's introduced to the right people while you're there. All right. Well, that's the overview, guys. That's what's going on in March, at least for day one, right? So, like I said, for anybody that's in the GovClose program that's on the call here, that's watching, day two is going to be available for you guys as a mastermind. But for this one, this is going to be for anyone that wants to attend and go through that boot camp version, see what it's all about, see if it's for them, see if they can capitalize on that. Let's see here. Let me bring this back up. So anyone that has a phone can use that hashtag right here if you want to go check out what some of our pricing looks like. But yeah, I'm going to open it up for questions. Let me see here if I can go back. I think Hal and the team have been answering some of them as we've been going along. Let's see here. We already covered Joshua's going to discover a completely new niche. Boot camp is on the 25th. So 25 March, guys, mark your calendars. Let's see. Larry says he's working on logistics, hotel, and flight. Yeah, so by the way, there's so many niches just within that, Larry. Logistics in and of itself is a huge, huge area. We have people in the GovClose program that are certainly working on different things there. Logistics, hotel, flight. Yeah, depending on what you actually are trying to do with a hotel. We have someone that would book hotels for the government. Essentially, the government's doing some training somewhere and they, book a flight of rooms for the agency. So there's a lot of different areas there that you could potentially capitalize on. And let's see here. I'll throw it out to the sales team as well. If there's any questions from them, anything they'd like to put out, anything that, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, I think most of the comments I'm getting here, like I said, a lot of them, the sales team is handling on their own. Like, hey, is this a 1 or 2 day event? It's going to be it's a 2-day event, but the boot camp is only a 1-day event. So just to confuse things a little bit here. Also, if you check in the comments, you could see here's the actual link to our sign-up page if you want to attend. So it's govclose.com /sales-bootcamp. Someone wrote "Go Navy" in here. Okay, man. No, everyone's welcome. Let's see, Larry, my niche has been construction for many years. How can I develop new niches without the experience in that field? Do you mean that you want to work in an area that's not construction, Larry? Or are you looking for new niches within construction? So that would be one of my questions for you. Let's see here. Do the attendees become certified, or is that? No. This is not the certification. The certification program is a 1-year program. So that is much, much more in depth. This is a 1-day boot camp that's going to give the basics. Our GovClose certification program, that takes usually about 3 months for the students to get through. That goes in depth. They all have to build a federal sales roadmap. That would take days for you to accomplish the first time just doing that piece. So no, there's no certification in here. This is more of a overview training of the process. Now, anybody that wants to go into GovClose after this, I think what we're going to do is just discount whatever they paid to go to the boot camp if they want to go in. But this is not the certification program. All right, Larry, I have software experience as well, but no book of achieved business that I can point to. Yeah. So, look, what I would tell you is, and I tell this to anyone that's a lot of people come and say, hey, I want to start a government contracting business. And the first thing I say is, do you have a business? Right? Because the first contract you win, especially with the government's the hardest one typically, and you don't have past performance with the government yet. Right? So what I like to do, well, I shouldn't say what I like to do, but you want to at least have commercial past performance if I'm trying to sell to the government. Now, does that mean that you can't sell to the government if you don't have a business already? No, it doesn't, especially if it's something like software, like you're developing software, right? Like, so these new and innovative technologies and solutions, they're programmed specifically for those. That can make it a little bit easier to get into the government contracting space. But I would tell you, if you've had a construction business over the past few years, that you're first and you want to be a prime contractor, it would be a lot easier for you to win a contract in construction and then do a good job there. And then slowly you could branch out into other things, if that makes sense. Clear as mud. We'll go into it, Larry. I think you're signed up, so we'll go into it in depth in March. What is pricing linked to the GovClose certification? If you want to go to GovClose certification, just go to govclose.com and go to, there's a green button that says watch our free training. It'll give you an overview of the course, and then you can click a link and go talk to our advisory team, and they'll be happy to go over the different pricing options with you. Yeah, see, can your job experience count for past performance? Your job experience does not count for past performance. It doesn't mean you're not an expert, but there's a difference between you working for a company doing something or working for the government and you actually running a business and being responsible for delivering the result. This is why we have a major part of our program is consulting, because you don't need a company doing this to be a consultant. So for instance, if you were in, we had, let me give you a good tangible example here. We've had people come from the government that, didn't own a business, but are doing tremendous work advising companies in things like cybersecurity and GSA contracts. We have some people that have no experience doing anything, some kids in their 20s, they've gone through, but because of what they've learned in the bigger program, they're able to work with companies. And I mean, they are high paid consultants. I mean, they are getting paid. We get paid by the project. They're generating multiple streams of income per month, right? So it's easier to get involved as a consultant selling to companies, and it's a lot faster too. So that's a better way to leverage your experience working for another company. So, and that's also one of our tracks in GovClose. And it's a good way to eventually get into government contracting, because what ends up happening is, let's say that, Larry has software experience, but he didn't have a company, right? He could be advising software companies on government contracting and doing good work for them, and then eventually partner with them on other government contracts. He's got the relationship. They know he's doing good work. You could start off subcontracting. So that's another way to get into it. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Oh, Marvin's just calling out Hal there. We have a great community, and we're going to have a lot of great folks at this event coming up here in March. I will leave this open here for another minute or two to see if there's any other questions, whether it's about, whether it's about this event or if you just want to ask some general government contracting questions. Happy to do it while we're all online here. Yep. Thanks, Marvin. Appreciate that. Oh, we got a question. We got a live one. I like your GPT. I like your GPT skull in the is your avatar. What's the question? And then while he's going over that too, if anyone wants to see the syllabus for GovClose, the more in-depth syllabus, there's a link at the bottom of govclose.com that can take you to that. And one thing we did just add is a really robust proposal writing course. I shouldn't even call this a course. This is a program, right? So because we do so much one-on-one and group coaching, but it goes very much in detail into how to read a solicitation and build a compliance matrix, which is absolutely the core tool to writing a proposal that's not only going to meet the government standards, but it's going to keep you safe, make sure you're following all the instructions. You're going to have something that you could potentially win. All right, let's see here. I have a software company. What is the landscape for contracts for software? We are Hell Driver 2 community. I'm seriously considering your course to help my company on some software bids. So what I would tell you, first of all, the software landscape is huge. I mean, whenever we do really dig into software spending from the government, we're talking about billions of dollars spent, tens of billions of dollars, right? But on different things. So remember, software is typically, the government doesn't buy software for software's sake. They have a requirement. They're trying to solve a problem, right? So what you're trying to do as a software developer, I would say, hey, what type of software programs have you put together, products have you put together in the past? What type of problems are they solving? Right. And once we have an idea as to, specifically, where you would best fit, now we can start looking at, okay, what are the agencies like? Hey, if you're software for accounting firms, right? Well, we can look and see exactly how much is being spent each year and how competitive it is. If you're looking to develop software for potentially, maybe some type of innovative solution, well, that's where we can start looking at something like Other Transaction Authority, SBIR, STTR, especially for companies new to the game. If you're innovative, if you can develop, make changes quickly, adapt, some of these programs are really great to get your foot in the door. Sometimes it's a little bit easier, because there's a long timeline selling to the government, which is why a lot of our consultants will consult and have a company selling to the government, because consulting is a relatively quick turnaround time as far as winning contracts. Okay, you literally make okay. I get you. Well, that's awesome. But here's what I would tell you, right? If you can literally make anything, remember what I said earlier? I don't know if you were on. I was talking about why it's so important to be focused and to have a solid niche, right? If you say you can do everything, you're not really doing anything, right? Like, you need to be focused. So you can do anything what we would want to do. And if you are in the program, if you, whether GovClose or you go to the boot camp, what we'd be doing is looking at what the government's problem sets are, and then looking at what you could actually develop software to. Where do you think you'd do a better job? What have you done in the past, right? So what could we point to as potential past experience that I could show the government of work that you've done? And we'd be looking at a couple niche areas for you to start engaging on. So instead of approaching as, hey, we could develop to anything, we would go, it might be something really boring, but a problem the government really needs to solve, right? And so that can actually get you, that could get you the contracts that you're looking for with the government. But again, it's not a fast or easy road, but certainly one that, if you have the right capability, we can make happen. Yeah, you're answering questions before I even said it. You're down for the long timeline and putting the work. Okay. Small business clients. Yeah. And that's what we're doing. We're finding a problem set that you can focus on and start gaining traction in. And then once we have that, for instance, some companies I've worked with, they could develop anything, right? But one in particular focused on help desk software for help desk services, right? And I think it was this was a couple of years back, but it was help desk services incorporating the ability to work with people with special needs, right? So, if it's the VA or another agency, they have people that they're trying to help, but maybe they hard of hearing or sight or whatever. Well, they have different technologies they're putting into the software to make it a little bit easier to work with, people that have different handicaps and disabilities. That's a very specific niche, right? So you could, and by the way, your entire business could be something like that. But once you get past performance, once you start winning those contracts, now you can start expanding, and the government trusts you, right? So that's the other thing is, hey, he's built this amazing help desk software. Now maybe the government is, or maybe someone related is like, hey, we need someone to develop a software tool for training, right? So in fact, we have one of our past clients, software, they built a training tool specific for special forces training. And same thing, right? Like gaining traction, amazing product or service that's delivering what the government needs, sometimes exceeding what the government is looking for, right? And then you build and you start expanding from there. Let's see here. Yep. No, it's great. Yeah. You're in community. Okay. Yeah. No, look, government contracting, guys, at the end of the day, And I'm about to hang up here, but it is a very exciting space, and it's exciting for a few reasons. One, there's a tremendous amount of money in government contracting. The US government's the single biggest purchaser of goods and services in the world. When you combine that with the fact that so few businesses are selling, what did I say? A quarter of 1% of small businesses actually sell to the government. And the government spends more year over year. Despite everything that we've heard, they're going to spend more year over year. Now they're talking about $1 trillion just for the Department of Defense. We'll see, or Department of War. We'll see what actually happens there. But you have very few people that understand this, and it is complicated. When you have a ton of money, something that's complicated, and very few people that can execute, what does that translate into? It translates into an opportunity. But it's not an opportunity for everyone. This is a skill set that is hard learned, but we do a really good job of methodically teaching that. And that's why we have our program. That's why we're doing this boot camp coming up. And again, love to see you guys there. Signing off for now. Check back here this week. We'll have another video coming out on our YouTube channel. If you're not familiar with the YouTube channel, GovClose. We also put out a lot of content on LinkedIn. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
After going through the course, I was able to land a client that pays me a monthly retainer to actually help them develop their business and go after these federal contracts.
I was able to get a consulting gig with a software company that currently works with the intelligence community.
Within 2 months, I had my first client. So the initial contract was for a 3-month contract for $4,000 a month.
So 27 years old, you've never worked in government contracting, you've never worked as a consultant, and you just closed your first deal, is that correct?
That's fair. And I've got a couple small projects on the side as well. So definitely probably my best investment I've made all year.
A cold call landed a 9-figure government contract.
Start a consulting business and a high salaried position as a account executive in public sales. So you're doing both of those things.
I'm living the best of both worlds right now.
So my name is Mike Knickerbocker. I am a naval officer that's getting ready to retire. Right now, I have 3 firm clients and 2 more perspectives. I'm able to provide value across different industries because the skill set that I learned through the course, I was able to apply my own experience.
GovClose came and it was a no-brainer. I wanted some secret sauce.
This has allowed me to live in Germany. It's a little hazy today, but we can do that. You see?
Oh yeah, dude, that's beautiful.
The content, the training, it's invaluable. It's written.
And Deb, what motivated you to join the GovClose certification program?
Wow. Well, I think that wanting to work with a leader in the field, someone who understands government contracting on a deep basis and has the reputation, the experience working with you and your company was a natural.
The students that graduate our program, they go on to start their own consulting firms, winning high dollar consulting clients. They go on to land high-paying salaried positions as account executives with companies that sell to the government. I'm so proud of the people that have gone through our program. And if you are considering either a job or a business, and by the way, some of our students are doing both, as I did. They're running a consulting business and they'll have an account executive job. It's transforming their lives. It's bringing true wealth to them and their families. Back to the video.